The 24th of October has been officially marked across the world to celebrate the founding of the United Nations, the biggest organization of peoples and nations, currently with 192 member states. This year's celebrations coincide with the 65th anniversary of its foundation. It's a jubilee for Albania, as it was admitted to the United Nations 55 years ago. While being a UN member since the mid-1950s, Albania has only had 2 decades of real cooperation with the UN. Until the late 1980s, Albania had quite a formal relationship with the United Nations. Over the past 2 decades, Albania's relationships with the UN has changed radically from formal representation with an ideological character into cooperation in the interest of democratic governance, implementation of international standards, increased civic participation, the closing of gender gap, increased public access to information and communication technology, environment protection, support for the rights of the child, and human rights in general. Today, Albania is one of the 8 countries, the only one in Europe, to pilot the Delivering as One UN initiative. Building on the reform agenda set by UN member states, the One UN concept accelerates the efforts for increasing the coherence and effectiveness of UN operations based on the model of One UN program, one budgetary framework, one leader, and one office.
Albania showed real commitment to build a strong United Nations when it asked to pilot the Delivering as One United Nations 3 years ago. Through this reform initiative, 14 United Nations organizations or agencies with their unique mandates, expertise, and distinct identities have come together under one strategic program in support of Albania's national development priorities and EU integration goals. In the area of governance, inclusive participation, quality basic services.
Donor funding is committed to a new pooled instrument known as the One UN Coherence Fund. Manages the funds in accordance with instructions issued by a joint executive committee, which is co-chaired by the director of the Albanian Department of Strategy and Donor Coordination and the UN Resident Coordinator.
Ishte një program frymëzues dhe kur u lançua zyrtarisht.
I think it was an inspiring program, and when it was officially launched, Albania volunteered to be one of the pilot countries. Our application was welcomed, and the years that followed have been remarkably exciting, benefiting both the country and I think the UN, as it has been a different and better way of working.
Për të parë një mënyrë të ndryshme dhe besoj më të mirë të bërit gjërave.
Numerous donors have provided support for the One UN program, including the Dutch, Spanish, Swedish, Norwegian, Swiss and Austrian governments, as well as the European Union.
The arrangement of assistance provided by UN agencies through the One UN program is one step forward, and it gives added value to the process, since the UN itself is better organized internally. Reforming an organization like the UN is not easy. Even reforms in small countries such as Albania are not easy.
The UN has begun the implementation of many joint programs, one of which is the Culture and Heritage for Social and Economic Development, implemented by UNESCO and UNDP. Promotes, preserves and protects Albania's cultural heritage. Over the past 5 years, significant events have been marked, such as the inscription of Berat in the UNESCO World Heritage List and the inclusion of isopolyphony as an extremely valuable intangible form of cultural heritage for all humankind. In the meantime, work has begun to reconceptualize the National History Museum and to establish a master's level course in cultural value management. In addition, the quality of tourist information for visitors to Berat and Gjirokastra increased, following an opening of tourist information offices in both cities, and efforts are underway to improve the cultural marketing of the country abroad through cultural diplomacy. Albanian artisans' work in the cities of Shkodra and Gjirokastra is also the focus of the Cultural Heritage Program through the establishment of 2 artisan centers.
It was born out of the need to use our heritage. Gjirokastra's bazaar was abandoned, while in early 20th century it harbored some 400 shops. All this was made possible thanks to a very successful cooperation with the UN program on cultural heritage for economic and social development.
The economic governance, regulatory reform, public participation and pro-poor development program is a UNDP World Bank initiative. In its pilot stage, under the goals of the National Strategy for Development and Integration, the program has guided the establishment and operation of the Energy Regulatory Entity and General Directorate of Water Supply to improve the monitoring, capacity usage and quality of service delivery. Another program component is focusing on consumer protection, helping to develop the capacities of state consumer protection bodies by bringing them in line with the best European practices and revising the national strategy and policies for consumer protection and market supervision. Focusing on the needs of Albania's youth, 3 UN agencies in Albania, ILO, UNDP and UNICEF, in cooperation with IOM, developed a joint program, Youth Employment and Migration. The goal is to extend decent work opportunities for young people in Albania. The joint program is working in 3 areas: to strengthen the capacity of local labour market institutions to integrate and implement national policy priorities through a coherent youth employment action plan, developing strategies that minimise the risks of migration for youth from rural areas, and to increase the positive impact of migration through the better allocation of resources for youth employment. The program also focuses on promoting the contribution of Albanians abroad to the development of the country. The program is also supporting the return to Albania of young professionals working abroad through public-private partnerships. The implementation of new employment programs in the regions of Shkodra and Kukës are supporting youth in need and are contributing to the reduction of migration risk. This is the Employment Center for Young People in Shkodra, which now supports capacity building in Shkodra regional employment offices.
The purpose of the services offered is to develop specific plans for our future, as well as to educate the young with specific skills for the labor market.
Grupmoshat që përfiton shërbime në këtë qendër janë
People who access services in the center are between 16 to 29 years old. They come from various backgrounds. However, priority is given to groups in need and young women.
Më prioritet kanë grupet më në nevojë dhe femrat.
The One UN Joint Programme on Gender Equality and Domestic Violence builds on the expertise of 4 UN agencies: UNIFEM, UNDP, UNFPA and UNICEF. Under the programme, Albania further strengthened and enhanced its law on measures against domestic violence and adopted the important law on gender equality in society. For the first time, harmonised gender equality indicators were developed and adopted by the government. These indicators facilitate the monitoring of gender equality and the status of women. NGOs from 7 districts, together with youth parliaments, made coordinated efforts through training events and door-to-door campaigns for increasing awareness and mobilising women and girls as a constituency to counter family voting practices and hold decision-makers accountable for their legal and political obligations. As a result, the 2009 general elections marked the highest turnout of women since the end of communism, while the number of women MPs more than doubled from 7% in 2005 to 16.4% in 2009.
The UNIFEM-supported activities have consisted of discussions, meetings and trainings with women in rural areas in order to increase their turnout in elections. All this significantly contributed to the end result.
Albania joined the Roma Decade in 2008. The Empowering Vulnerable Local Communities program surveyed their status and opportunities for positive change within marginalized communities in the areas of education, employment, public administration participation, and political representation. The program has assisted those communities in gaining access to public services and has provided support for inclusive policies for minorities, engaging mediators from the Roma and Egyptian community as facilitators and trusted mediators with public authorities. 5 UN agencies, UNDP, UNICEF, UNFPA, UNHCR and UNV, are working together towards this priority. The goal of the Joint Programme on Nutrition is to prevent and address malnutrition and food insecurity in Albania among high-risk population groups through strengthening national policy development and enhancing technical capacity at the national and local level. The program is being implemented by the Ministry of Health, the Institute of Public Health, the Ministry of Agriculture, Instat, specialized institutions, regional authorities and civil society organizations with support from UNICEF, WHO and FAO. Interventions are being carried out in 5 districts in northern Albania, in the prefectures of Kukës and Shkodra, and 2 municipalities in Tirana. Those areas are heavily affected by child malnutrition and have a high number of Roma inhabitants with high rates of unemployment.
Neve ofrojmë vërtet partneritet të qëndrueshëm, pra kemi resurse njerëzore të afta për të bërë partner të programit.
We offer a stable partnership. We have human resources capable of being a partner for such programs, while also being motivated to make necessary changes for achieving the MDGs, including the goals of this program, which are very important for our country.
Synon jo njohjen e problemit, sepse mund ta themi thjesht, po, fëmijët janë të keq ushqyer. Dhe ne kemi
We have an excellent demographic study, which was carried out in cooperation with WHO and UNICEF, showing that our children, particularly in rural areas in the north of the country, as well as in peri-urban areas around Tirana, do not have normal growth.
Nuk ka një rritje normale.
There is a memorandum of understanding among the major agencies, including the 5 line ministries involved in this program, and implementation in the southeast of the country has begun. It is important to say that human resources are strongly committed to the implementation of this program. The Albanian government is working hard to achieve the MDGs, especially to improve mother and child health.
Neve të arrijmë objektivat e mirëqarit, por dhe përmirësimin e shëndetit të nënës dhe të fëmijës.
UNDP, UNICEF, WHO, UNAIDS, UNFPA and UNODC are providing technical and financial assistance to Albania for the multi-year program for controlling and preventing the spreading of HIV/AIDS. The program includes an awareness-raising and education campaign aiming at changing behaviors among the general public, with particular focus on the younger generation.
We have always had cooperation with United Nations agencies in Albania, and they've been our main donors and supporters in all our activities.
The UN is now a trusted partner in Albania's road to development and integration, growth and well-being of its people.
Through this program, we are testing out ways in which the United Nations family can deliver in a more coordinated way, defining new approaches in effective cooperation, partnership, and development. Experience shows that 2 principles have been essential to the success of our development assistance efforts. And the success of this program, of course, stronger national ownership and leadership, and more targeted assistance that responds directly to Albania's development priorities.
Although the initiatives taking place as part of the One UN program might seem like technical issues, the renewal of arts and crafts, the rehabilitation of damaged natural resources, the promotion of self-employment, or monitoring of inequality and poverty, in reality, they all have an impact on Albania's progress in achieving good governance and the development of democratic values to ensure that Albania can truly be a deserving member of a united Organization of Nations.